Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today we're looking at the results of the Madison Regional Championships, which happened last weekend, 1st and 2nd of June. You're looking at the Facebook page for the ARG Europe Pokemon team, the team that I'm part of. We've got a nice graphic going on, nice and early, showing you the top 66 decks that rounded out the day 2. So I figured I'd start here just to give you a good picture of what decks overall were the most successful in Madison, and then we'll be breaking down the top 8 decks and talking about how the lists sort of line up and all that stuff. So Reshizard way out in front in day 2, 34%. Pikarom being the second most successful deck, so the two biggest, best tag teams are still at the top. Pikarom was sort of dethroned by Reshizard, but still definitely a relevant archetype. Zoroark, Persian variants, oftentimes playing Slowking in there, are also doing pretty well still, 9%. Blacephalon, Naganadel, so the GX Blounds obviously ended up winning the event, and that was, a couple spots in day 2. A baby Blacephalon or two also did pretty well, so that's also reasonable to note. It was the sort of big hyped archetype from Japan, or one of the big hyped archetypes, maybe the biggest non-GX sort of hyped archetype from the set. And that has started to creep in with a result here or there. Nagquag, especially Frank Persic's very interesting Nagquag, where we had the amazing highlight reel moment on stream, where he is able to Beast Game GX a Mew for 4 prize cards with a Water, Grass, Fire unit energy. And we also get to hear Kirk Dubé have an amazing reaction to that moment as well. So I do encourage you to go and watch that clip on the Twitch if you can. Weezing, Gramble, Zapdos, Beasts, all only showing up a little bit. And Zapdos is the big one. I think Zapdos is the most interesting one. Not very high conversion for Zapdos at all. Bear in mind, there was a lot of stall in the previous weekend of regionals. And that may be a reason why people are put off Zap Beasts. They're scared of both stall and Weezing. So its positioning isn't fantastic. I think it's still got a reasonably positive Reshizard and has a pretty reasonable Pikarom as well. So it's interesting to me to see Zapdos do so poorly, really, when you think about it. Doing, worse than, Quagnag is very odd. So I don't know if it was people just concerned about stall popping up and Weezing, or if there were enough of those decks to keep them down low. But I'm surprised that we're not seeing Zapdos Beast convert a lot higher. I would expect that to be stronger in the following weeks, as we're seeing these two tag team decks do very, very well. A non-GX Zapdos archetype is going to do pretty good against them, I would assume, a lot of the time. You have your own Jirachis to survive their let-loose combinations, and you can tech for these decks pretty easily. If you want to beat Pikarom even better, you can have the Mew in there, so you can force a Sledgehammer turn, for example. Against Reshizard, you already have Coco GX, which is very strong, and the only real headache is Miltank and stuff like that, but it wasn't played in the most recent lists, so Zapdos should be pretty good against these tag team decks. And then we have a bunch of decks in the other section as well that we'll look at a little bit when we go through the results on the Limitless TCG website. So the main overall takeaways here: Zapdos grossly underperformed. Stall did not make day 2, at least in this graphic. I don't think any Stall made day 2, so it pretty much just off the map. Essentially, the first week of regionals, it was like, hey, this can beat people who are still playing Zoroark and Zapdos. And then the wave of Reshizard finally came, and it's like, well, Stall can't really handle that much. And Pikarom is also good against Stall because it has Zero Aura, it has good base output, and it has non-GX attackers like the Zapdos itself, and even Coco Prism Star can be a good attacker. And if you're just adding in Stealthy Hoods or whatever, you can get around Plume. So I think this wave of tag team decks really has sort of made Stall not really unplayable, but a hugely risky deck, and we're seeing that proof here. That they're not succeeding much, and even Zoroark players adding in Titanizer, Monkey into their lists just to answer Stall. So Stall was put on a pedestal on the previous regionals, and then as soon as people want to answer it, they can, and that seemed to be the case throughout a lot of the lists that you'll see in the Madison regionals, players 60 card lists. A lot of people are having answers to them, so that's something to bear in mind. So Stall, I wouldn't put it as a tier 2 archetype even at the moment. It's below tier 2 in my books, even though it's got a very strong core. I think it's just inherently in a bad spot in the meta as it's shaping up right now. But I would anticipate the likes of Zapdos, maybe even Gramble, to do better over the next few weeks as well. I think there's definitely a space for non-GX decks to poke their head back into the format and start making an impression on these tag teams. And also, Blounds being back is no bad thing for Zapdos either. It's one of your easier matchups if you can get around a lower muck. So if you want to play Zebras, you can easily beat GX Blounds as well. So I think it's all looking pretty good for Zapdos and Gramble from where I'm sitting. I think those could like start creeping back in. Gramble obviously being checked by Pikarom quite nicely. But I think it has an inherently reasonable reshizard and stuff. So yeah, those are the decks mainly that I'm looking at, where it's not really like... I think Zapdos underperformed, Gramble's about where it is, really. I can see it as like a tier 2.5 type archetype, but maybe that push of being a non-GX is also very good. Weezing still being like tinkered around with. I think we saw blower counts go up a lot this weekend, and I foresee that remaining the case. Lots of the Pikarom builds played double blower. The Reshizards, I think they actually didn't play blower, actually. But the Zoroarks were playing it. Some Zoroarks were playing either Sky Pillar or Champions Festival. There's a whole bunch of people aware of Weezing and having answers for it now as well, so something to bear in mind. But let's jump into the top 8 list in more detail. A quick little brief overview there is always great, but it was Ian Robb's 60 that took down the tournament, playing a Blacephalon GX deck. He had the 3-3 Naga line, the 1-1 Alolan Muck to shut down Jirachis from Reshizard, Pikarom, Zapdos, so that's still amazing, especially now that Zapdos has gone away from Zebstrika for the most part. They've gone for more like basic techs. This Alolan Muck hurts them way more. Double Marshadow is your only like Pokemon means of draw. Not playing any Lele or Dedenne. Lele would be the one that's more surprising because you already play Treasures, but just sticking with Let Loose. I've had a few games with this deck and I've felt there might be a need for Lele to be put in here, but Devil Let Loose is definitely very strong and annoying to deal with for a lot of decks. It's got the pretty straightforward draw engine of the 4 Lily, 4 Cynthia, 3 Guzma, and the 2 Welder come into the list. I've been experimenting with my Welder counts when I've been playing Blounds. I've been as high as 4, never lower than 2 though. It feels like it's a really good include in the deck, obviously. But I've been trying builds with double Flint and 4 Welder, and that's seeming like okay for me as well. So it'll be interesting to see where we land on these Blound lists with Welder. It's obviously like an include in the deck. It's just how reliant we want to be on this card compared to other things. It's playing the 4 Ultra, 3 Treasure, so a little bit low on the ball search count as like usual builds. The 1 energy switch is really odd for me. I feel like this could definitely be a 3rd Welder, potentially. Or even just like 1 Fiery Flint to complement your 2 Welders. The energy switch can make some cute plays happen, but it's just a 1 copy, and you have to find it at the right times. Like 2 copies was when we couldn't welder to our stuff, but now we can welder to things. So going to a 0 energy Blound is like fine now, when you just have more reliance on welder. So I think this is the flexible spot of the deck, if ever I've seen one. It's probably the only flexible spot that I can see, unless you want to experiment with stuff and make cuts to go more welder focused. But the energy switch is the only card that I like disagree with, I guess I would say. I feel like it's outweighed. Like the pros of it are just so much less now that we have welder to get extra attachments in on our clowns. So that's like the one card that I'm not a huge fan of. The Field Blur comes in, again, as I was saying, good against Weezing, good against blowing off Jirachi skateboards. It can get around all sorts of things. Good against Wishful Batons as well for the Baby Blounds deck or for Quagnag. Obviously, Quagnag's still going to be very hard for you, but the Field Blur can at least get rid of Batons. Also played 1 copy of Lysander Labs. Now, I said the E-Switch was the only card I disagree with. The Lysander Labs is also a strange one. I think, again, this is my own testing with Blound so far. When you're let loose reliant, you just want to be as simplistic as possible. You're let loosing yourself to low hand sizes, and drawing into this Lysander Labs feels like it could be very bad for you at times. Whereas it could just be like a second Ultra Space. Ultra Space is always great, because it's getting you Poipoles and Blounds, and that keeps your board setup going, which is really important against some of these tag team decks, because you need to reach high, like high with this deck. You need to get multiple Poipole down, like every turn 1 now. So the Lysander Labs is a strange one. It's obviously powerful in shutting down, some key math for some cards. Maybe it can help out against like Sylvali, against like Zoro Sylvali, so they can't use the memory tools. It basically forces an extra answer from people sometimes. Again, it's shutting down Jirachis and stuff. There is a disruption element to this card, which is reasonable, but I think overall, like, it feels like we're also disrupting ourselves with Marshadow a reasonable amount of times, and I would prefer it to be simpler, but that's just me. Like, I would probably just play a second Ultra Space, but maybe I'm just boring and lazy. But yeah, then it's just the 16 energy count. So the 2 question mark cards for me, Energy Switch and Lysander Labs. Otherwise, it's really solid. Also notable, Zach Lesage played a 1-1 Persian line in his in his Blounds this weekend. He cut Muck, which I think is not great because you need to play Muck, but the Persian is pretty interesting to just guarantee B-strings and stuff. So that's something to bear in mind, just to have in the back of your minds if you want to try out a different Blounds build, which landed in 17th place, bubbled top 16, which is unfortunate. Then we get to see the DDG reshizard. They were stopped in the finals. Azul, unfortunately, not able to take the win. But you can see here, the 2nd place, 3rd place, 6th place, 10th place, 23rd place, and 30th place list in Madison were the DDG team's reshizard. So it's got a huge amount of very good players piloting it and getting results. And it's a very simplistic reshizard build, playing Jirachi as the main package. I'm still always the biggest fan of Jirachi. When there's so much let loose in the format, again, Zapdos plays it, Blounds plays it, that's like becoming more relevant now. Mirror plays it, and Pikarom plays it. Like, those 4 decks are like, 4 of the top 6 or whatever decks right now. So let loose is basically everywhere. So having defense against that's really important. It's got the 2 Reshizard and 2 Eevee Snorlax GX, which is pretty insane, really, when you think about it. 2 copies of this guy. He is obviously phenomenal against the Zoroark players because they're trying to play water techs, which is great for you. And he can just get through like non-GXs. Like, if you're up against Quagnag, you can just start dump trucking as much as possible, force them to have like Onyx and stuff. And even that's not getting a one-shot, and they don't play, what's it called, Band or whatever. So, yeah, even Snorlax is just an annoying card that isn't red and is still doing enough against like those matchups where Reshizard's bad, which is pretty cool. It's got the Arcanine in here. He can be a non-GX attacking presence. He can Grand Flame for extra attachments like back onto your board. So you can like invest up front to the Arcanine, and then he'll Grand Flame for your next sort of attack up as an option, which is cool. And also, of course, he gets around Vileplume, which is important. The double Let Loose, the Lele, the Dedenne, and the Miltank thrown in here. The Moo Molt. So they are playing the Miltank to do some healing, which is obviously important against the Zapdos players and a few other decks out there. Obviously great against Weezing as well. So when you play Arcanine, that's also pretty good if you can heal up with Miltank. It's a pretty good number that he's hitting, and not getting hit with detention gas and stuff, so he's an awkward Pokemon for them to deal with. Got the Welders, the Guzmas, and the Kiawes. Very low supporter count, very similar to what's it called, Pablo's initial list. Instead of 4 Kiawe, it's just 2, and instead they're going to have the 4 Acrobike, the 4 Ultra, the 4 Nest, the 4 Switch, just to really complement that Miltank and Jirachi, those options. The double Flint to dig out your Fire Energies, I'm a big fan of. The 2 Fire Crystal, the 2 Board, and the 1 Heat Factory. So only 1 Stadium card, no Field Blower, and like not many counter stadiums to Shrine. Again, looking towards like those Zapdos builds and stuff like that, it's something to bear in mind. Very tempting to start looking towards those lists. And I think this is the most simplistic, but also like greedy in a way that you don't have answers to, like I said, some of these non-GX decks, which is interesting. Also, they're not playing choice bands. So Mirror is actually a strange one. They're not playing they're not playing Kukui or choice band. So they can only one-shot 1 Reshizard with their 6 energy GX attack, and then they're trying to set up another Reshizard for win, or they're trying to find their prizes elsewhere, knock out a 1 prizer and then like a Lele or a Dedenne or something. Which is quite interesting. Obviously, 230 is a great sort of baseline of damage, and these choice bands are only going to help out against the Pikaroms and the Reshizards. But Pikarom and Reshizard did very, very well, so I can imagine us sneaking those cards back in. They were able to go super simplistic this weekend, and it went very well for them. But I feel like if you want to have an edge in these tag team matchups, you probably do need the Kukui and the bands, so I would definitely consider those going back in the list. But for this weekend, not mandatory. So Pram played the same 60. We saw Xander pilot Pikarom to a top 4 finish. His list was also played by Rahul, Will Jenkins, and Justin Bakari, all with nice top 32 placements there. Rahul in top 16. And he's still repping the Pikarom stuff. It's got the double Zapdos, double Dedenne, with no Lele GX at all, just going for the radar-based build and looking to Dede change your hand instead. Playing double Let Loose, also playing the Resetting Hole Marshadow as a nice counter stadium. That could also be something that goes into reshizard as well, bear in mind. This could, instead, like, if you don't want any other stadium, like it would only really be like Viridians that you put in or something like that, Marshadow could be an option for the reshizards. Oh, it is playing Lele. What am I talking about? So yeah, it's just more of an emphasis on Lele. Sorry, on Dedenne, but still plays Lele. Also playing the Absol to shut down other Jirachis. That's what it's not playing. It's not playing its own Jirachis. It's playing Lele and Dedenne instead of like any Jirachis. Okay, so it's just trying to be turbo-based, I guess. The 4 Lily, the 3 Guzma, double Volkner. Again, really low support accounts for this deck and the last deck that we saw, the Reshizards. So really, really low like raw support accounts. Just trying to use Marshadow and Dedenne draw as much as possible. Got the 4 E-powers, the 4 Switch, the 4 Ultra, double Nest. Yeah, double Electro Power. That's sorry, double Radar. That's a lot of Bull Search. Got the double Blower, which I like a lot. I just think it's a really strong card right now. Stretch is an interesting include for them. They're playing double Pikarom, double Zeraora. Yeah, that's an interesting shout. The one Stretcher. Okay. Also playing 1 copy of Rope, double Band, got the Stealthy Hood as mentioned for helping out against Weezing and for helping out against Vileplume, Thunder Mountain, and also the 12 Lightning. So pretty interesting build. No Jirachi is here, but just trying to use the other abilities to get those large hand sizes rolling into combos. We see Cody Walensky. He is the 2016, I think. Is it 2015 now? The Greninja finalist for Worlds, so he's back in the top tables. He's playing the Greens build of Reshizard. Very similar to Frank's list from... Is it Frank? Whose list was it? No, it was Kian's list. I think Frank Persage is on my mind just because he played the Beast Game thing. It was Kian's list, but this time there's a Ditto included in the deck. This is meant to be like a prize skewing option, I think, in like Mirror, because you're going to try and like copy what they're doing, which is pretty interesting. It's playing the double Kukui, the Surge, the Acerola, very, very similar to, yeah, Kian's list by the looks of things. Not too much different at all, actually. Yeah, I think this is very, very close to Kian's 60. I think the Ditto is like one of the only changes I see. Dropping a Volk, changing it for a Ditto, and then there's like not many changes at all. Yeah. So still repping the greens and showing why it's powerful. We see Jimmy again playing the same 60. This is a very easy top 8 discussion. We do see 2 Zoroark decks round out the top 8, and even Zach Taylor bubbling at 9th. So Patrick was playing Zoro, Persian, Slowking. 2 OVs of each of these lines, so pretty thick. I love double Persian, man. Cat walking into your stuff is just so vital, and the double Persian helps you get there. His attacks are also great as you push to the late game. And it means you physically have a high Pokemon count so that you can Vengeance as well. So I like the 2-2 lines of both of these. Slowking, obviously, like only great for Reshizard, but it's enough of a matchup to be concerned about that you just have to play it right now. Playing the 1-1 Muck, playing Dedenne Lele, playing Resetting Hole Marshadow, playing the Mew as well to help out against Pikarom. So he's got heavy techs for Reshizard, and then he's got like the tech for Pikarom, which is cool. Seeing as though the tag teams did very well, I'm sure those were vital. Also playing the Monkey, Tate and Liza option to, again, help out against those stalling variants. It might end up that those end up getting swapped out for other cards as we move through this format, because stall, again, seems to be like just so risky right now. In a field of Reshizard being like the most popular deck, dodging and weaving becomes much more difficult now. But he's playing a pretty straightforward support account, just 2 Guzma, even though you're not playing Lycanroc's a little bit scary. It's got the Judge, Acerola, Kukui, Tate as mentioned in here for the Monkey. Otherwise, this would be just like a Cynthia, I guess. Playing 4, 4, and only 3 com is a little bit low. I do like the double Field Blower. So it's playing no Stadium of its own. It's just playing double Blower and Marshadow, which I'm not against, really. And it's got the regular stuff, the Power Pad, the Stretcher, and double Band. Everything's pretty routine here. The only thing you might question is the 1 copy of Water Energy. It means you can Memory Melt, which is pretty interesting, and it's like a retreat pivot. Also means you can attack with Oranguru without getting it fabbered off when you're up against Stall as well. So looks like he wanted to answer Stall by the looks of things, and that's pretty cool. Especially when you can like Memory Melt away like Lucamines and stuff. That's actually pretty cool. So then we end up with Caleb's 60. He also played the Persian, but it's just a 1-1 line where it has the thicker Slowking, has the 1-1 Muck, got himself all those regular Pokemon. So we're starting to see the Pokemon shell of Zoro Persian Slowking like shape up. In this case, it's just a thin Persian line, but everything else is pretty routine. Playing a very high judge count is a big surprise here. 3 judge is really, really high. But yeah, I guess when you can catwalk back into the stuff you need, judge is pretty good for disruption. Double Guzma, 1 Ace, 1 Kukui. 444, got the stretches, the power pad, the blower. The judge's whistle coming in. So man, he is really keen on judging people. Really, really keen on judging people. Double choice band, and in this case, a Brooklet Hill sneaks into the list. This is one that I think if you're playing the double Slowking, it's like the only stadium I would really consider. I think when Kukui is like much more of a staple now, I don't think you really need Devoured Field. I think the Brooklet does the job. So yeah, pretty interesting top 8 lists. There's a few other like highlights down here that I guess we could talk about. As mentioned, the Persian coming in Zach's build is definitely an interesting one. More Blounds doing well. Arlo with that Gramble making top 32. There was a post on, I think it was Hey Fonte about his list and a few of the counts going on here. I believe it's similar to a list posted by Finnegan Lynch on his website, playing the 4 Viridian Forest Poggers. Pretty strong stadium for the deck. We also saw a Blissey make top 64, and this was just a literally just Blissey, the one that does 80 for each heads that you flip with powerful slap. You combine with Welder, and you also have triple accelerations and DCs in here. Also rocking 1 reshizard as well, which I'm sure gets some use at times as well. So just trying to be a chunky non-GX 160 hit points is really annoying for, again, the likes of like Zapdos and stuff. So pretty annoying non-GX to get through, and you try and take advantage of batons and whatnot to retain this energy to make a big Blissey flipping a bunch of coins. That's the whole idea. With Fliptini in the back as well as an option. And then we see another Vikavolt. Again, they're sort of sneaking around, these Vikavolts. I think they're a pretty sketchy archetype, but they're sneaking around here and there. Definitely something that you can't like write off. A few Weezings. Looks like they ended up all sort of in the lower stages of day 2. Looks like they didn't have a very high conversion rate. I'm not sure if that's just going up against higher caliber players will play around the deck a lot better, and that's something that Weezing can't really control. So I think that's something that's worth noting. The Weezings had a huge wave of hype, and although they're making day 2 sometimes, they're also having a lot of trouble converting much further in the day, just from playing better people. So something to bear in mind. But yeah, that's going to be it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. Where will it go for the NAIC? Is Stall going to come back? Are these non-GXs going to come and try and sweep in under the rug of these tag teams, or are they just going to stay on top as the big old threats that can just put pressure on the board early and combine it with a let loose? I'd like to hear it all down below. Get involved in the discussion, and I'll be back tomorrow with another video. So cheers.